Welcome to the Fashion Insiders podcast. This is your source for straight-talking, no-fluff fashion business conversations that add real value to the way passionate fashion entrepreneurs live, work, and thrive. Having the courage to start your own fashion brand and business, design, develop, and manufacture your products can be a tough and lonely process. It may not be easy, but it can be simple. I'm your host, Desi, and I'm here to show you how to optimize your performance as a fashion entrepreneur and brand owner so that you can launch and grow a fashion business that is profit-rich, efficient, and can scale online and offline. And when done right, it allows you to generate a real tangible wealth for yourself and others. Let's go. Hey guys, thank you for being here and listening to another episode of Fashion Insiders & Co. podcast. Today I want to talk to you about brand and direct response, two different ways of building your fashion brand. And today's topic is not something that is actually widely discussed in the fashion industry. Yes, we do hear people talk about the importance of brand and branding, but we never really openly have discussions about branding for a fashion brand versus building a business that is a direct response to marketing activities. And I'm going to explain to you what the two things mean and why it is important to focus, in my opinion, on building a brand. So what is branding? Branding is, a set of elements that you very strategically and thoughtfully put together around the business. It's almost like a set of vocabulary, but visual vocabulary that you over time build around your business so that your business becomes instantly recognizable and it stands out. And that is something that a lot of primarily the luxury brands that we see that are doing so well and the ones that are very old in terms of decades and centuries have done so well. They have very slowly over time build a visual vocabulary via which we instantly recognize them, and that vocabulary gives them value. So branding really, when it's done well, maximizes the value of the business. Branding is something that works on quite a long time horizon. It is not something that you can instantly within a few months or a couple of years you build. It's something that you're constantly evolving and building on. And over time, over this time horizon that we are speaking about, as the brand evolves and you are stacking up all this visual vocabulary, the brand starts to earn a reputation. And the reputation is what basically other people say about your brand. You have to be the one to initially have a vision of what you want your brand to be and create this visual vocabulary. And through your actions and the way you present your brand, you then have to keep on reinforcing how you want your brand to be seen by others and perceived on the market. But it is only when people start talking about your brand that you know whether you've done it right or not. Because it is not what you think your brand is, it is about what your audience thinks your brand is. So that's very important to understand, and that is why it takes time to create branding, strong brand vision and image of a business. Direct response, on the other hand, is the action of taking some sort of marketing campaign or advertising and getting an immediate response. So it's about extracting value immediately upon taking a certain kind of action. And if we were to put this in terms of fashion, the fashion industry, what is very clear and what becomes very apparent is that businesses, fashion businesses, who have strong branding are the luxury companies or the more premium brands and luxury companies who have, over a number of decades and sometimes centuries, spent time consistently building that visual vocabulary and perceived value of the business or brand that they are working for. And the direct response businesses is fast fashion because they don't have a strong branding. They create multiple products constantly, and they, through advertising, ensure that these products sell really quickly. So they advertise, and the immediate action that they want to take is to have sales because that is their business model. Now, how does that relate to you, a small fashion brand founder? Why is it important for you to know this? The fashion industry, as we all know, is very competitive. It's very oversaturated. It is quite foolish to think that no matter how good your idea is, that you can just launch a brand and make a lot of money instantly or within a short period of time. Yes, it can happen. We have plenty of examples that we can reference where this has happened. But that kind of success, it's not a long-term success. It's almost like a flash-in-the-pan success, something that is perhaps riding a trend, or it lasts for a while, but it cannot be sustained over the long term, for the simple reason that when the product has to evolve, or when the market is saturated with this particular product, and it will happen because the minute there's something successful, so many copies appear on the market. You need to know how to evolve this product and your business in order to continue drawing value from this idea. And unless there is a strong brand with a strong support around it by a loyal audience and customer base, they would move. Those people who bought your product are going to move somewhere else, to the next flash-in-the-pan product that is hot at the moment. So making cash quickly as a brand, as a fashion brand, it's not a problem. It's just that it is not so easy to do, and it is not long-lasting. The opposite of that, obviously, are brands who have strong branding. And as we just said, as I explained already, it takes time to build a solid, meaningful, respected, reputable brand. It takes time. And it takes consistency of messaging. What I see a lot is, particularly now where things are economically tightening up a little bit, I see a lot of small brands really being in a rush, wanting to take shortcuts and make quick decisions and go into product categories and launch products that are hoping, the brand founders are hoping that they will bring in some sales. And often they don't stop to ask themselves the question, well, how is this on brand? What is this doing to my brand? Is it contributing, or is it going to take away? For the sake of a few sales now, what is the long-term effect that I am creating by taking this action? So the clients I work with, this is something that very often I just ask that question, and very often those, bright ideas that they had in the middle of the night, all of a sudden are dropped simply because it's an idea born out of desperation for sales, but it's going to erode whatever value you have created in the brand up until that point. But obviously, in order to survive, it's really important that you have sales and that you have a cash flow that allows for the business to exist. And one of the things that I always say, particularly to small brands founders that I work with, is that sometimes if they have to get another job or keep the day job, which they might have, and not yet resign and move full-time onto their brand, they must do whatever it takes not to be in a situation where out of desperation they have to take decisions. So sometimes that means, for a short period of time, making the decision to get a part-time job or do some consultancy and get some money in. And I know a lot of brands, a lot of small brands who do this. It's just that they don't advertise it. And that is something even that large brands that we see presenting at New York Fashion Week, London Fashion Week, Paris Fashion Week, all these big brands that we sometimes see and admire, but a single founder, maybe like 10, 15 years in existence, you don't know how much consulting work they do behind the scenes that they don't advertise. But it's so important for them to do that in order to keep the cash flow coming, in order to cover the operational expenses of the business that they're building for the long term, and not be in a situation where out of desperation they have to take shortcuts and make decisions that are not great for the future of the brand. And I saw this with my own eyes. Many years ago, I was privileged to have a look at some business plans of a bunch of brands that were applying for a very prestigious fashion award. And one of the first things that struck me was that when I was looking at their financial sheets and their profit and loss accounts, I saw how many of them were consulting for all kinds of different brands, and they were doing all kinds of different products. It was really, it took me by surprise. And that's when I realized that, of course, they were doing this, just because they're in the press, just because they're, paying for the expensive showcases at fashion weeks, etc., doesn't mean that all this money are coming from sales that they're making, particularly when this was way before the pandemic, particularly when before the pandemic, the wholesale model was very strong, and a lot of these brands had to wholesale in order to have that presence on the market and to build their authority. And wholesale is a volume game. You make money when you have a decent margin at the wholesale price and you sell volume. And a lot of these small emerging brands that had a high profile in the press, they didn't necessarily sell in volume. So consulting behind the scene and doing some designing or some other work that was bringing in money, cash flow into the business was super important. But to the outside world, that wasn't advertised. They looked like they were doing amazingly well because they were in the press, because they could afford fashion shows, etc. And we all thought that they are riding the wave of success. And in some ways they were, but in an unexpected way. However, I want you to understand what happens here. When they have this possibility to bring in cash into the business from other sources and therefore not compromise the decisions that they take on behalf of the brand, and they have the space, the financial space and the mental tranquility to slowly build the brand and keep on re-establishing the visual vocabulary that they're building. And over time, that starts to earn compound interest. And by compound interest, I mean it's like I'm drawing a reference to saving money in a bank. When you put money, you have an interest that the bank gives you, and over time, this amount of money grows even bigger, despite the fact that you're not putting so much money, because of the interest that you're earning on everything that you've put in up until that point in the bank. And with the brand is exactly the same. The more you're consistent with the way you build your brand, the more you're consistent with the quality of decisions that you are taking on behalf of your brand, the more you will see the effect over time. So over time, when you have created a strong visual identity for your business, people will start referring to you automatically as you are the brand for XYZ. They would see a product that is that reminds them of you, and they'll say, oh, this reminds me of such and such brand. Think of, for example, Burberry. When we say the name Burberry, I straight away think of the Burberry check. When someone says Missoni, I straight away know what Missoni looks like. I immediately have the image in my head. When you say Chanel, I straight away think of the quilt and of, the camellia flower and of some of their iconic products. And that didn't happen overnight. That took quite a long time to establish, but they didn't change direction. They didn't get desperate when there was recessions, when there were economic downturns. They didn't change direction. They kept on steadily building on what they knew their brand was about. And they kept reinforcing and re-emphasizing their brand values, their brand identity, design identity elements. They just kept on going on executing on their brand vision. And the result of this is that over time, opportunities start coming to your way that have financial gains, but they come to you because another business wants the weight and reputation that you have created for your brand. There are many examples. If you read the fashion press, if you read newspapers and follow magazines, you would see so often collaborations that are a little bit strange. There was one designer, for example, a few years ago, I can't think of her name now, but it was all of a sudden announced that she was collaborating with a property development company. And this particular designer, she is very famous for bold colors. She has this, she's a luxury designer, perhaps like 15 years in business. And she's very well known for big, bold colors on her clothes. And all of a sudden she was collaborating with a premium property development company I had never heard of. And it was very interesting, this collaboration, but of course, once I thought about it, it was a no-brainer. They were both at the same level of the market, and this property company needed her name and her brand to attract the right clientele. And because of her reputation and price point at the market, she was dealing with these clients already, international clients with a lot of money who could afford to buy her clothes and who had the confidence to wear the bold colors that her clothes were made in. And for her, she was getting paid for this collaboration. I think that what she had to do was she had to design the interiors of their show apartment. And I think this company was basically selling property new development portfolio. So this fashion designer was asked to create the interiors of the show flat and was getting handsomely paid for it, which was, wonderful. It was a lot of cash flow going back into her business. But more than that, she was getting exposed to a completely new audience of wealthy individuals who potentially are going to be new clients that will come to her business. So not only was she getting paid to do the job, but she was also going to get a whole load of new clients and exposure. And vice versa, the property company were getting the prestige of being associated with her. She would then be going to events and talking about the collaboration that she is having with this property development company. They will secure a lot of press in fashion and in the world of interiors through this collaboration, which would put this unknown property company on the map. And of course, they would attract a whole load of new clients who would not know about this company simply through the association with this brand. And again, the reason that this designer was able to get this kind of collaboration was because she consistently spent time building her brand. And she had behind the scenes done consultancy jobs for other businesses and done whatever it takes in order to secure cash flow into her business so that she makes the right decisions for the longer term. Whereas with fast fashion and smaller brands who are so intent on just getting sales, they have to seize the opportunities. They have to be really aggressive in terms of marketing and advertising in order to consistently get sales, but with that aggression and this quick action that they're taking, very often is at the expense of building a brand for the longer term. So you have a situation of building a business where you can choose to reinforce the value and the stories that you're telling, which is a slower activity and it takes time to do, versus taking actions that would require quick results. And this is, as you can probably see, this is what premium and luxury fashion is compared to fast fashion. This is how you build a brand for the long term, where you can then maximize the value down the line without limits, versus building a business for the short term that is perhaps cash rich now, but if a trend changes, if the economy changes, you don't really have a cemented position in that market to make sure that you can keep on growing in the same rate for the long term. And more importantly, you also, because you are taking quick actions, and often these actions are based on price points and aggressive tactics, you are focusing on getting the sales versus building the clients and the community. And therefore, you don't have a loyal clientele that will stick with you through thick and thin, ups and downs of the economy, through the tough times and the good times. So I wanted to bring this discussion to you and make you perhaps think a little bit about what kind of business you're building. Because like I said to you, at the moment, as things are getting tougher, as the economy is experiencing a downturn, I see a lot of small brands, quite rightly, panicking about sales, about their cash flow, about how they're going to grow their business and make money and get paid and etc. And that is really pushing them to be quite desperate and to run around and consider taking actions that for the long term will be detrimental to their businesses. I see a lot of people constantly starting to do sales and reductions and promotions, endless. And it's not a great place to be because you are basically teaching your customer base some bad habits. So that's it for today. A short episode, but I hope that the message in it was powerful enough for you to consider and perhaps reflect on and decide what kind of brand you want to be building and what does that mean for the kind of decisions and strategies you have to employ, and what kind of tactics are you then going to put together and put into action in order to ensure that you are building the kind of business that you want to have. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Hey, thank you for tuning into the show and listening all the way to the end. If you want to know more about any information referred to in this episode, we've got all the links listed in the show notes, which you can find over at www.fashioninsiders.co/podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and conversation, make sure to subscribe to the show and get new episodes downloaded as soon as they come out. And if you have any questions, I'd love to help you. email me your questions to insider@fashioninsiders.co or just send me a DM over on Instagram. Finally, I'd really appreciate it if you could open up the app on your phone and leave me a super quick rating or review. Your reviews tell iTunes that this is a great podcast and it's worthwhile listening and sharing. And that can help me and my guests reach even more people. So that's it for today. I'll be back soon with another episode. And until then, thank you again for listening.